and pronouns on if you would like. And you can do that by clicking the 3 dots on your Zoom square and clicking your name, or go to participants and then locate your name, and then you can click it there.
Awesome. Looks like folks are dropping in. Looks like Virginia Beach, Richmond. I'm very jealous of folks at the beach today. Wish I could be you. Yeah, I'm seeing some Richmond, Mary Baldwin University. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And I think we're about to get started. So I'm going to toss that over to Talia as folks continue to introduce themselves. Don't let our talking stop you.
Thank you, and again, I'm so excited to see all these familiar faces from last time and new faces. It's always an incredible time to be in community with all of you. So thank you for joining us. This is our second legislative lunch and learn, getting ahead of myself already. Second legislative lunch and learn, and our focus today is on affirming diverse families as we discuss confirmatory or second parent adoption. If you don't know what that means, that's okay, we'll get into it. We know that we've had another transformative year for LGBTQ equality in Virginia, with 11 pieces of pro-equality legislation passing in 2021 alone. Oh my gosh, this is last year after we passed about 16 pro-equality pieces of legislation. So we are making some serious progress in Virginia. There's still a lot of work to come, but it is exciting. Throughout the next 4 weeks, we will be continuing our legislative lunch and learn series as we discuss these new laws that went into effect. They're every Wednesday from 12 to 1 p.m., just like today, so you're in the right place. That's through June 16th is our last one. Registration is free and required for each event, and you can learn more and register on our webpage about this event. And I just dropped that in the chat for anyone. In case you aren't registered for our future events, we hope you'll join us next time. So this series is a chance to celebrate our successes this year, educate our community, and spotlight advocates and legislators who have laid the groundwork for these victories, several of whom are on the call today. Each session, like today, will feature community advocates and experts in a panel-style discussion with plenty of time for Q&A, and we definitely want your questions. All right, so I'm going to really quickly move on to some logistics just to make sure that we're all on the same page. I know Zoom can be a little difficult, so just want to make sure everyone feels empowered to participate digitally as best as they can. All right, so like I said earlier, in case you're just joining, feel free to update your name and pronouns on Zoom by clicking the 3 little dots by your name if you hover over your Zoom square, or you can go to participants and then find your name and then click rename. Pretty simple. Just have to do a little clicking sometimes. Please note that the session is being recorded. We welcome you to turn on your camera if you like, but no worries if you prefer not to, and we'll make this recording available to you after the event. We ask that you stay muted throughout the presentation, but we welcome you to drop all questions, comments, feedback, etc. in the chat throughout the session. Please know that we are tracking questions throughout this event, and our panelists will get to as many of them as we possibly can. If you can't find the chat, try tapping participants or the more button, which is probably at the bottom of your screen. And finally, the digital room monitor for this session is Mario Guevara, he, him pronouns, and he'll be monitoring this session to keep it secure for you to enjoy. So if you have any technical difficulties, feel free to reach out to Mario in the chat. You can always private message him as well. So all of that welcome and housekeeping out of the way, I want to go ahead and do really quick staff introductions for the Equality Virginia team. So my name is Talia Hernandez, I use she and her pronouns, and I'm the program director at Equality Virginia. And we welcome you here today. And I'll pass it over to V.
Thanks, Talia. My name is V. Lamnick. I use they, them pronouns, and I am the executive director here at Equality Virginia, and I will pass it over to Andi.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for being here again. My name is Andi. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm the Policy and Communications Coordinator here at Equality Virginia, and I will pass it over to Mario.
Hey everybody, my name is Mario Guevara. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the Development and Operations Coordinator here at EV. Super excited for today.
Awesome. Thank you, team, for getting introduced. So we're going to do a quick overview in just a second, and then we'll get into our panel Q&A. We'll close with some resources, and then finally just close out together in a meaningful way. But really quick, we like to start off every meeting with just a kind of a check-in, see how everyone's doing, and also lift up, how folks are doing today. And so we want to know, what is giving you joy today? Feel free to drop that in the chat. What is giving you joy today, or this week, or the past month? Give me anything. For some of us, it might be being at the beach right now. I know for me, it was a nice long walk I got to enjoy before it got too hot. It's hot now and humid. Summer's here, y'all. Warm weather, full moon. Oh, I didn't know it was a full moon. I think all of us are looking at Senator Boysko's background. Aw, seeing family for the first time since COVID. That's amazing. Getting back into running. Oof. Yeah, that. Cicadas. Oh my gosh. I don't think they're here yet in Richmond, so hope y'all are enjoying them elsewhere. Cats and iced coffee. What a combo. Staff meetings. Getting married next month. Oh my God, congratulations, William. Oh, best for you and your future spouse. Meeting people. A birthday's coming up. Oh, that's exciting. And getting vaccinated. Yeah, get vaccinated, y'all. This was really beautiful. Thank you all for sharing some of your joy with us. We really appreciate it. And we certainly want to share this joy with you as well. So with all that, I'll close that out and then pass it over to V to give us a quick overview of confirmatory adoption today.
Yes, hello. I am definitely going to just give a quick overview because we have a really amazing panel lined up, and they are truly the experts in this legislation and can talk about the history of this advocacy effort, which is actually about a decade long. We've been advocating for this for about a decade. And so we are really thrilled that this year is the year that it came to fruition and got across the finish line. And that has so much to do with so many of you on this call. So thanks again for joining us. So this bill was introduced by Senator Boysko. There was no companion bill in the House. So she carried it on her own two shoulders and did a masterful job of ushering that through the legislature. Thank you so much, Senator. This bill was super important because we know that families are formed in a variety of different ways. And so right now, for example, if an unmarried couple is raising a child together, and has had a child together, both of those parents actually have an automatic legal relationship to that child. As the biological parents of that child. However, for LGBTQ couples or other couples who are raising a child together and may not have that biological relationship, they also are lacking in that legal relationship as well. And we know that that can be really troubling and a little precarious for families, and especially for the child in that situation. And so we were really enthusiastic to move this piece of legislation forward so that parents who are raising children together can have an actual legal relationship with their children, regardless of whether or not that couple is actually married. And so we have actually become the 17th state, or the 18th place, if you count DC, to have this protection in place. And so we're not ahead of the curve, but we're solidly there in the middle of the pack in terms of states that are getting this done, which is just so important, again, because at the end of the day, it is the children, the young people in these families that are really going to benefit from having the legal relationship with both of their co-parenting adults. And so I am not going to labor here because, again, I am so excited to have you all hear from our esteemed panel of experts. And I would love to go ahead and pass it along to Senator Jennifer Boysko, who has been in the legislature and a longtime friend of Equality Virginia. Rebecca Ricardo, who's executive director at C2 Adopt, a wonderful adoption agency based here in Richmond, who does a lot of LGBTQ related work. And then also to Colleen Quinn, who is a legal expert and who is our go-to person on this topic and anything related to family law. She has been doing this work here in Richmond for a number of years. I'll let her tell you how many years if she'd like. Yeah, we're just so glad to share this time with you and for you to hear from them. And I'm going to pass it over to Andai, who's going to share a little bit more and facilitate this conversation with these great panelists.
Thank you so much, Vee, for that brief overview. And yeah, we're so excited to have our incredible panelists here with us today. I'm going to go ahead and have them introduce themselves, starting with Colleen Quinn.
So I'm Colleen Quinn out of Richmond, Virginia. I use she, her pronouns. I have been in practice, since you mentioned it, 32 years. And supporting the LGBT community. I belong to the LGBT Bar and to the Virginia Equality Bar Association, and have been working on this, what Senator Boysko fortunately called a confirmatory adoption bill rather than second parent bill, but working on it for the last decade with Equality Virginia, and I'm thrilled that it's passed. I run an adoption and surrogacy law center as part of my practice, and so this definitely impacts the work that I do.
Thank you so much. Rebecca.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rebecca Ricardo. She, her, hers are my pronouns, and I'm the executive director for C2 Adopt. We used to be known as Coordinators 2 Inc., and I am very proud to say our Richmond-based adoption agency that has always tried to find ways to work effectively with the LGBTQ community, even when adoption agencies weren't technically supposed to. So we have always stepped up and tried to move legislation forward that benefits this community, because we think it benefits children in the long run. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me join.
Thank you for being here. Can't wait to learn a little bit more about the work that y'all are doing. And last but certainly not least, Senator Boysko.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really good to see you all. I am on vacation with my husband and my 2 cats. And so you can see that this is a real beach behind me, which is really exciting. I was thrilled to be able to work on this issue along with Evie this year. A lot of y'all don't know me, but this has been a real concern for me, marriage equality and the ability to have your family. It's been something that has been really started inspiring me in, when I guess from the time they passed that Marshall-Newman amendment. And so it was a real pleasure to be able to carry this bill and to see it pass bipartisanly. I also want to note that I think that Betsy Carr might be on the line, Delegate Betsy Carr, and I just wanted to send her a shout out as well, my colleague in the House of Delegates. And also we went to the same college, Hollins College in Roanoke together. So I'm looking forward to the conversation and so glad that we're all here together, having something to celebrate.
Definitely here for celebration. And thank you for joining us, all 3 of you. It is incredible to be on the panel with y'all. I'm going to run over some quick logistics one more time. So Talia dropped it in the chat box, but again, just remember to stay muted during the session. Feel free to drop your questions in the chat box throughout. If anything comes up, we will get to them. We're tracking questions, and if they're not able to be answered today during the session, we'll definitely answer them in our recap. So I'm going to kick us off with a little bit of pre-prepared questions. And the first one is, I know Vee mentioned it a little bit earlier, but what is confirmatory adoption and what does the confirmatory adoption law do? And that is open.
Well, as a lawyer, I guess I'll take that one. So traditionally, we've had step-parent adoption, which allows an adopted or biological parent to have their spouse co-adopt with them, but it required marriage. And so traditionally we've called second-parent adoption, where 2 people that are co-parenting who are not married And they could be in a romantic relationship. They don't have to be in a romantic relationship. It could be two sisters. It could be a mother-daughter type situation. But traditionally and across the United States, we call second parent adoption, where a second parent who is helping parent the child who is not married to the legal or biological parent can then co-adopt with them. So this was a pretty big deal because it took out marriage as the factor. Now, it still requires the primary parent to join in the consent and want the other parent to adopt. So that's still a requirement as part of the second parent adoption. The best thing is we called it confirmatory adoption. Thank you, Senator Boysko. It sounded better. It didn't have the same old connotations that were kind of attached to the prior attempts. And it kind of solidified what we were doing, which was you basically have two parents that are the de facto, that is in fact parents to the child. And we were simply confirming the second parent's legality as the other parent. Hopefully that wasn't too legalese for you.
Oh, it was perfect. It was perfect. Definitely understood. Do either Rebecca or Senator Boysko want to tap in?
I'll just say that I was really pleased to see us be able to pass this on a bipartisan measure. And I think a lot of it was in the messaging, the talking about that this isn't for just one group of people, but really, somebody who might be going through an addiction problem or a mother and a child could do a confirmatory adoption as well. And I think it helped to open up people's point of view in the Senate and the House. And we were able to get it passed with broad bipartisan support. I think that people realize that children need and deserve to be loved by two parents. And I think that was meaningful for a lot of people. So I really want to thank you all for shaping the bill the way you did and helping message it in a way that was accessible to all kinds of different people, if you know what I mean.
I would agree with that because it was important not to make sure it was just an LGBT motivated bill. It was important to say this applied to two foster parents co-fostering, the mother who was co-parenting with the opioid addicted daughter. And then I used the example of, and I had just gotten this call a couple months before we attempted this. I had the ex-boyfriend who had been co-parenting the two girls for about 10 years. And then he and his girlfriend broke up. But the two girls considered him their dad. And the real dad was deceased. And at that time I said, I can't do this adoption for you, even though the ex-girlfriend and the children and everybody were on the same page and they wanted to cement him as a legal dad. And now we can do that. So it was important to kind of show the breadth. And I remember Senator Boysko, one of your colleagues, talked about how many kids were in foster care and that we needed to, do this for the children. And so because it became a child-centric bill, and also you did a great job too, and so did Equality Virginia, of lining up a lot of folks to testify in support, which shot down the family formation of folks. And so it was well done in terms, and being virtual actually, I think helped. But it was very well done by Equality Virginia and the senator's office in terms of kind of chaperoning it or shuffling it through.
This really is about permanency for children and creating permanent legal relationships. When you have someone who's actively parenting a child and yet can't create for themselves because of our sort of cultural dynamics that we expect around parenthood, a legal relationship, then we put children at risk of having a lack of permanency and a lack of access to all the things that a legal parent has authority and right to do on behalf of their child. So this was really something that was easy to get behind and support, and we have supported it all along because where we have existing relationships of someone actively day-to-day parenting a child, to be able to put a legal permanent relationship there for that parent and child is critical to the ongoing relationship, as well as we just know that children are more likely to have better outcomes when they have permanent relationships within their family.
Definitely. And I appreciate y'all centering the children in this, in moving forward with this bill, because I think, as Senator Boysko mentioned, that's what changed a lot of hearts and minds in the state legislature. So that is awesome. And I think, Colleen, you mentioned it a little bit earlier, just you touched on marriage a little bit earlier, and I want to dive into that just a little bit more, because a lot of people think that since we have marriage equality, nationwide, why can't people just get married and do step parent adoption? Why did we need confirmatory adoption or second parent adoption?
So I was having a conversation last night with Claire Guthrie Costanaga, who most of you might know as the executive director of the ACLU, and she's been a long time EV supporter and supporter of the LGBT community. And I knew this bill was important, but she's very concerned about the current composition of the United States Supreme Court. And the Virginia's constitution, and I think there are 5 other states, I could be wrong about the number, but there's a handful of other states that have similar constitutions that still say that marriage is only between a man and a woman. And she's concerned if the constitutionality of that is challenged in some way or form, that the current composition of the US Supreme Court will find those constitutions to be constitutional, which means that marriage equality could be under attack. Now, what this bill does is it basically, and I've been doing same-sex step-parent adoptions like crazy since Trump took office. I mean, there was a lot of fear, and people got married that didn't necessarily want to get married so that they could do the step-parent adoption. And so the saving grace is that with the second parent adoption, it takes marriage out of the equation. And so all of these current adoptions, and even ones we do now where the people are not married, hopefully will be legally protected because it takes the marriage factor out. And so having that conversation with Claire last night, I really wasn't as concerned as she is, but she's got her thumb on the pulse. And after she retires at the end of this month, it's one of the number one things on her agenda is to protect marriage equality.
No, thank you for that context and that insight. Does anyone else want to chime in?
I will just say I am shocked and very concerned about that. As you all probably are aware, we did pass the first constitutional amendment effort that will take away the definition of a man and a woman in marriage, and we actually changed the language so that it was, we have a right, everybody has a right to be married. I was really proud to vote for that. Adam Evan is, of course, the lead on that one, but it's going to have to go through again. Hopefully, we will maintain a pro-equality majority in the General Assembly in the House, and that, then it would go to the general public in, I guess it would be in 3 years now. But, we are taking steps in Virginia right now while we have a strong progressive trifecta of folks who care about these issues, trying to be ready to bolster the state so that in the event that the federal government does make a change in their policy, we will still be protected. But I'm so pleased that we do know now that confirmatory adoption will allow families to do what they need to do to make sure that they're intact and have all the legal responsibilities and rights that they deserve to have.
But I think we have to remember that what was nice about this confirmatory adoption bill is that we aren't talking necessarily only about people who might have what we would perceive to be a romantic connection or relationship. We're talking about 2 people who, I think Colleen even mentioned, a grandmother and her daughter who are parenting together. But I have a personal experience of my parents, my mother and my stepfather, who did not choose to legally marry one another, but I certainly see them that way. But they raised 3 of my sister's children. But they didn't want to get married. They had very valid reasons for not doing that, and could only stay with my mother being a custodial guardian of those children. They would not have been allowed previously and to be in a permanent adoptive relationship of those children, even though they raised them to adulthood. So it's lots of different scenarios that this bill covers, so that it isn't just about, well, you know, can't you just get married and do a step-parent adoption? There were loads and loads of types of families that this was covering, which is really wonderful.
Anna, thank you. And Senator Boysko, I definitely appreciate you tapping into or touching on that marriage piece. Here is your daily reminder to get out and vote, folks, both in the general and in the primaries, which is coming up in just a few short weeks. So that is my plug for that. I think my next question is, y'all have been tapping into, you know, what type of people or how many different types of people, the scope of this new law and how many people it will touch. So I also appreciate that. I think my next question is, what message do you all think this bill or this law sends to Virginia families?
Well, I'll start. I think it shows the commitment that we have to our children and to families. I mean, we all talk about family values. This is it on a platter. And I think it's important that everybody has the opportunity to have two loving adults in their lives, and just, you know, thrilled that we are really being thoughtful about what happens to our children in the future.
I would concur with that. And going back to the testimony, we tried to really focus on issues with the opiate crisis, because I am seeing so many relative and grandparent adoptions and caretakers stepping in, and unfortunate deaths of you know, the biological parents of these kids. And so I think that was the messaging. The messaging was we with COVID, with the opiate crisis, with the issues we have going on right now, it's taking a village. It's you know, other people are stepping in to parent, and we need to secure for the children these what we call de facto, in fact, parenting arrangements. And the messaging was very good, and I hope that messaging also gets out to the public.
Well, and we should be sending the message that we want to secure for children legal, permanent relationships when and where that's appropriate. And when someone is providing that role for a child, no matter how they get connected to that child, we know that we give better outcomes to children. The data we use from that is really from the foster care system. We know that when children age out of foster care without permanency, the statistics for dire consequences are really kind of horrific. And another area that Virginia needs to do work on, that we're definitely not 18th, we're 50th. But we can take that and extrapolate that to other families, that if we're leaving children without permanent legal relationships, we leave them at risk for higher likelihood of homelessness, higher likelihood for addictions, higher likelihood for incarcerations. I mean, there's just a laundry list of things that without security and secure connections, you have that potential increasing for children, as well as all the other issues that I'm sure Colleen can probably touch on more than I can about, you know, legal transfer of inheritance and connection to health insurance benefits and Social Security benefits transferring more easily. You know, we secure all that for children when we can have a legal relationship. So the message should be that this is what's good for kids. And why would we not want to send that message across Virginia?
Right, custodial relationships just don't do the trick, and giving these kids permanency with all the other benefits Becky mentioned is really important. You know, adoption makes them the parent a secure legal parent, not just a custodian.
We're just running through our pre-prepared questions. So I want to go ahead and dive into some of the chat box questions because I see them rolling in. I'm going to start with this one. What impact will this have on foster and adoption processes. Does it possibly sidestep that process? Sorry.
I don't think it sidesteps the process. I think we're going to have to get a lot of Department of Social Services workers educated to the fact that now they can do a home study on an unmarried situation. And I haven't, Becky can probably address this a little bit more because I don't know that the DSS regulations and the licensing regulations for the agencies have been revised to be I mean, and so most step-parent adoptions, you don't have to do a home study, but the idea here is that you could have a single parent still have a home study and do the adoption, and that with the plan that the other parent in the household would then do the second parent adoption. And so that is a feasibility now that will need to kind of trickle down to the adoption agencies and the DSS workers. It is a two-step process, but where you do have these situations, say a mother and a daughter that are co-parenting. Well, actually the daughter is actually a legal daughter. So let's just say we've got a mother, a grandmother and her sister, the aunt, co-parenting a child, and the biological child, the biological father is not in the picture. The biological mother has just passed from opiates. So now you can effectuate an adoption by the grandmom with the idea that you can do a second parent adoption by the aunt later. It gets a little complicated, but when in looking at foster parents, et cetera, now DSS has the ability to look and see, is there a situation where somebody is fostering a child with her sister? Let's say it's a single woman fostering a child with a sister. They're both in the household. And DSS can look at this now and say, well, really, these are the two parents for the child. We can't effectuate the adoption straight out, but we can actually plan now for foster mom to adopt this little girl, this 8-year-old girl. And because she's actually co-parenting with her sister that lives in the house, we can actually plan for the sister then to do the second parent adoption. So it allows for some creative solutions in the foster care system that weren't previously available. And it's going to be our job now to kind of make sure we educate and have the fact that this law is passed trickle down to the public agencies, that is Department of Social Services, and to the licensed private agencies such as Becky's C2Adopt.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I bowed out for a second because my internet bowed out for a second. So I might have missed a couple things Colleen made points about, but we can assess families that are not legally married as other in household, and but traditionally what created an issue is that we could do the assessment and tend to both adults, but only one person could go forward through the legal process. And so it still only secured a legal relationship to one person. And this is not, I don't think any of us intended it to sidestep any of the processes or procedures that are put in place through the foster care system for children who their goal is adoption, to go from foster care to adoption, as a way to get around that. It just, as Colleen said, it gives the opportunity for some more creative solutions to meet that permanency goal for a child. But it will take a lot of education. It's already been challenging over the years that we've been able to study families that are not legally married as an intact couple. We still run up against social workers, private and public agencies, who still go, no, we can't do that. I'm like, no, you can, and you have been able to for quite some time. So it's an uphill battle always to trickle down the information to the people who are on the front lines of doing this kind of work. But no, I don't think we're trying to sidestep anything there. We're just trying to create more opportunities for solutions for children.
Right. And just so you understand the framework, like two unrelated people to the children cannot co-adopt together if they're not married, like, and if they're not related. So the confirmatory adoption bill requires there to be a primary parent already that is the legal parent of the child.
Correct.
If neither of the two that are co-parenting the child are the primary parent, let's say they're a foster parent, the two of them can't at the same time adopt together under the current statute and the way it's set up. Now, the goal down the road would be nice if we could do like other states and have the two unrelated parties, not married, actually both simultaneously adopt the child at the same time. But right now our statute says a single person or a married couple. So right now this is still requiring a two-step process for the one unrelated parent to first adopt as a single parent and then consent to the other parent to do the second parent adoption. But it at least allows us this two-step process now for two parents that are co-parenting, that are neither one, is the legal parent. One can then adopt, and then the other one can co-adopt.
And if you wouldn't mind if I just kind of segue into something, the one problem that we had with this bill was from the agency who was afraid that they were going to have to hire a huge number of inspectors, people who could go into homes. And because confirmatory adoption is only allowing somebody who has an existing relationship with the family, we were able to help them feel a little bit more secure that it wasn't going to end up with a necessary additional fiscal impact that they had expected. And I think the definition of
we had person with a legitimate interest. Right?
Yeah, person with legitimate interest was just critical in getting the support for this bill. So.
Yeah, so we actually won't have to necessarily be doing assessments on a lot of these situations, to your point. We might have to, because judges still can ask for an assessment to be done. Even in a step-parent adoption, as it currently exists, we could be asked to do an assessment of a family, or I should say a local department could be asked. I don't know that they can order private agencies to do it, but they can order departments to do it. But that is up to a judge's discretion and isn't always required, as Colleen mentioned much earlier this afternoon, that a lot of step-parent adoptions go forward without necessarily mutual family assessment being done.
Yeah, thank y'all so much. I see two very similar questions, both from Melissa Irene and Sarah. So I want to tap into those really quickly. Melissa Irene asks, if someone already has two legal guardians and a family wants to have a confirmatory adoption or a third person, an aunt or a third partner in a poly relationship, for example, does this law allow for this? And similarly, Sarah's question is, can you speculate as to the impact of this law on the possibility of more than two parents, i.e. akin to the California law of 3 or more presumed parents? Yeah.
So I'll tackle that one because I wrote a law review article on mom, mommy, and daddy, and dad, daddy, and mommy. And having more than two parents is near and dear to my heart, having studied that issue. And when Equality Virginia and I first started working on the wording of the current bill, the initial attempt would have allowed more than two parents. I'm also on the Virginia Family Law Coalition, which are lawyers from throughout the state who are politically neutral, and to get them to back this bill, they were like, Virginia's not ready for more than two parents. And as Senator Boysko knows, as the bill went through, that was one of the concerns, was that it only allowed one other person with a legitimate interest in the child to adopt. So at this time, no, it's absent some creative lawyering and getting the right judge. At this time, it's really not going to allow for more than two parents. Now, that said, I historically have been getting a custodial arrangement for a third parent. So, where we have two legal parents, I've been able to get a third parent to be able to have at least some sort of custody along with the two legal parents. but it's not making that person a full third legal parent, but we do have that ability in Virginia.
Awesome. Thank you for giving that legal context, Colleen. And yes, keep dropping your questions into the chat. We see them rolling in. We have a couple more minutes. I want to tap into this question about, sorry, I just lost it, y'all. How are foster care parents prepared to embrace LGBTQ and trans children so it is addressed for adoption processes?
Well, I feel like that one is fine-tuned for me, right?
Yeah, a little targeted.
Well, you know, I wish I could give a better answer than I'm about to give, but I believe in honesty. So I'm going to say we aren't doing as good a job as we need to be doing preparing foster parents to successfully help LGBTQ and trans youth navigate through their childhoods. I am hearing lots of conversation that people are recognizing that we need to do that, that it needs to be a priority in Virginia, that we provide more guidance, that we provide more training, that we provide more resources. But I cannot say that across the board that is happening yet, as to the extent that it needs to. But I can say we're moving in the right direction. But we do need to do more. We do find that we're having more and more of those conversations of, do we have a child in a family that is affirming and supportive of what that youth is thinking about, struggling with, needing to discuss, needing to tend to, and do they have the tools to do that? And so we need to do more work in that area in Virginia, but it is on the table. It is being discussed. There is not official guidance yet. The child welfare system in Virginia is very slow to put things in writing as thou shalt do this when you work for a public DSS or a private child placing agency. But I know that the State Department is thinking about guidance, trying to put some things into writing eventually. I think we're going to get there, but we've got a long ways to go, just to be perfectly candid.
And I'll just say, so we know that there are a number of people in the General Assembly and in government who have not really connected with people in the LGBTQ community at a real personal level. And so they don't have sometimes the compassion and understanding that all families matter. I have a daughter who is a lesbian. And one of the things that I have tried to do is to humanize her with my colleagues. And so my hope is that as we have these conversations and as we are being honest and respectful of one another, folks who haven't been so respectful realize, oh, that's Jennifer's daughter. Oh, well, there could be another person like that. Maybe I should think through the way I'm behaving. And I've actually gotten a lot of feedback from folks. I've had people come over and basically apologize to me. I've had people who have been like, oh, that's so great that like they, and maybe I've heard some snide comments before. So I think as we are navigating these waters where we are trying to have equality, make sure that our kids are protected and have the same opportunities as everyone else, is that we have to continue to be out in front and to show everybody that there's nothing to be threatened by or to be afraid of. And we're going to make some progress. And so these kids who are in the foster care system or, needing the supports are going to have people, caring adults who are going to say, okay, let's do the right thing for all of the kids, not just some of the kids.
Most definitely, and I appreciate y'all's honesty and candidness. As Talia mentioned in the chat, definitely leads to growth, and we know that. And so I appreciate y'all saying that. We have a couple more minutes, and one question that we want to tap into is about the process, right? So we know that the court system is usually inaccessible to our communities, especially for folks who have intersecting marginalized identities. The cost of legal assistance, there's prejudice in the courts, we know these things. And so how can we continue to advocate for policies that will allow families to thrive and be protected as they hope to go through confirmatory adoption processes?
Well, I'll start with that. As a legislator, I don't know if everybody on the call knows, but it's the General Assembly who chooses the judges. So I live in Fairfax County. We have a very robust group of different bar associations who work with us to help us vet those candidates, but it comes down to who we choose. And so having a General Assembly that respects diversity and equality is one big step. So once again, I'm going to make the plug for making sure that you are voting in the upcoming election. But secondly, we are working to make sure that we're talking to everybody. So just a few weeks ago, there was a letter that was sent out as we are looking at expanding our appeals court to say, hey, remember that there are a lot of people in Virginia who have differing needs, and let's make sure that we have a court that reflects that. I will continue to advocate for that. I'm on the Judiciary Committee, and the other thing that I wanted to say is that we are requiring our police and sheriffs to do more training to make sure that they are getting a wider range of points of view. But we know that we have more work to do. We've certainly done an enormous amount, and I'm going to give Equality Virginia so much credit and all the stakeholders and activists who have really come to the forefront. But we're not done yet. And, I think there are a number of us who are pledging to continue to work forward to make Virginia a more welcoming place for everyone.
I would concur with that. There's still a lot of work to be done. I've been keeping a list of things that I'll be coming to Equality of Virginia soon because you got to start working on this stuff early. But one of them is in the adoption statutes. It still says for previously married folks that did not do an adoption while they were married. This would be like a step-parent adoption that they can do it later, even after the divorce, but still the language says it should result in no more than one mother and one father. So we got to fix that. The other thing is there's a judge down in Chesterfield who's convinced all the other judges in Chesterfield that because of marriage equality, that there's no need to grant a step-parent adoption. And so for my same-sex parents, he's been rejecting, and now he's getting the other judges in Chesterfield to reject our filings. Now the other option is possibly a declaration of parentage. But I want to get the step-parent / confirmatory adoption statute modified next year to basically say that no judge may reject a petition filed under the statute simply because there is marriage equality, or we'll have to work on the language, but that no judge may reject this petition relying on marriage equality. So his reasoning is supposedly LGBT friendly by saying, oh, these people ought not to have to adopt, just like a heterosexual couple ought not to have adopted. Let's say you've got a lesbian couple, they've used anonymous sperm donor from a sperm bank. And the idea is if a heterosexual couple, if the wife used anonymous donor sperm, they both would be put on the birth certificate and there would be no need to adopt. So his reasoning is, well, why should gay folks have to adopt when heterosexual don't? And also for the gay couple, for the lesbian couple, both of them will go on the birth certificate given a form that Vital Records has promulgated. So we can get them both on the birth certificate. But this is really super troubling because LGBT protocol, if you look at Family Equality Council, you look at any of the groups that are out there, Center for Lesbian Rights, it is to get a adoption done, have a court order, because a birth certificate is an administrative record. It can be challenged. Somebody can be put on a birth certificate that's not the biological parent and challenge it later. A court order is sacred, and we have a U.S. Supreme Court ruling, EL versus VL, that says adoption orders have to be given full faith and credit throughout the United States. And I did another law review article for University of Richmond on family formation, writing the storm out since the Stonewall riots, in which I summarized all the countries that still do not recognize same-sex marriage, which means the portability of same-sex folks that are traveling to other states. Like you have a lesbian couple that only has the birth certificate and not the court order. It is a problem to have a judge rejecting step-parent adoptions of the fallacy that the marriage, that because we have marriage equality, it protects that. And in light of my conversation last night with Claire, so that has to be fixed. The other thing is in the surrogacy statutes, I'm having to tell my gay guys using a surrogate that they have to be married. I can't get a court order for both of them without them being married. So there are more things that have to be done, and we need to be vigilantly watching these statutes and watching what judges are doing and making sure that we're on top of our game. And so all of us collectively can work in that regard.
I'll just throw a plug in for a larger issue that Colleen and I don't even think have had a chance to ever discuss this, but I think systemically and culturally, we need to now start thinking about this idea of the birth certificate being A, called that for all time, and B, what is its intent? How do we want to use it? What is its, all the ways in which people use it to prove identity, to prove citizenship, but should we not consider that perhaps we need to call it something else? Because ultimately people are on a birth certificate who had nothing to do with the biological birth of that child. And that's fine, and that's okay. But maybe we don't need to hang on to that language. And I do think that as we start looking at all these different kinds of families that we do want to affirm and that we do want to make legal relationships, another conversation that needs to eventually occur is, can we come up with, and I think Colleen actually just used the right language. I don't know if I'm going to remember what you said, a parent certificate or a
Order of parentage.
Yeah. Like, I think we can step away from some of that old school language that has across the board in adoption some other troubling issues that have nothing to do with this conversation today. But I'm just going to throw that out there as another piece that we're going to have to tend to at some point. Because to keep calling it a birth certificate when we're clearly going to look at documents and go, well, those two particular people couldn't possibly have given birth to this child, we're just being disingenuous to what the certificate really is. And I think we have enough words in the English language that we can come up with something else, and it can still be a legitimate document, and it can still be used for appropriate identification purposes as needed, as long as states say, yes, that is an equally valid document once it's created. So that's my plug. For
a legal parentage certificate.
Something, yes, we need some new language, but I think we have the capability of doing that at some point.
Yeah, I'll tell you just a real quick funny story. I had a woman contact me, and she said that her son, who was 10 years old, was not really the biological son of her husband, although her husband for the past 10 years thought he was the real father. And now the real father, who lived across town, was making noises about being concerned that if her husband died, he might be on the hook for child support. And I said, well, actually the guy's right. If you could come after him if your husband died and say he's the real dad. And so she said, I'll get back to you. And a month later, she called and asked if I did divorce work. And I said, sounds like you told your husband, yeah. And she's like, yeah. And then a couple of months later, she called and she said, we'll go ahead and my husband's going to do the step parent adoption, and the biological dad's going to consent, so that we get this right. Because even though her husband was on the birth certificate, that birth certificate was not definitive of the legal parentage. And so we did the step parent adoption and got the biological dad off the hook. Husband now was the legal dad. But I use that story to illustrate that we rely heavily on birth certificates, and this judge in Chesterfield who's relying heavily on the fact that two ladies are on the birth certificate and the fact that we do have marriage equality now is not good enough. We need to have something that truly secures the legal parentage for folks. And so we need to continue having this dialogue, as Becky mentioned. And Senator Boysko, I'm coming to you to help with that change on that second parent bill, that this judge cannot keep denying these.
Yeah, definitely. Let's do it.
Yeah, I'll work on the language.
I love this. This has been such an incredibly fruitful conversation. I've been sitting here taking notes because you're right. You know, there's so much that A, I've learned, but B, we have to tackle. So thank you so much to our panelists. I see folks are already starting to thank y'all. We are beginning to wrap up. So I'm going to pass it on over to Talia to officially, close us out. And again, thank you to you amazing panelists. But yeah.
Thanks, Amanda. Yeah, can we give a little round of applause for our panelists virtually? Thank you so much. We're really honored to have your expertise, your guidance, your support in the legislator. So thank you for joining us today for this incredible conversation, for all the work that you have been doing over the past years and decades for all sorts of different sorts of families in Virginia. Thank you, thank you. So as we wrap up today, we again want to end with asking a quick question that you can put in the chat. What is one thing that you'll take with you from today's discussion? We're always excited to hear what people are getting out of these presentations and panel discussions. And it helps us improve the work moving forward. And we just want to know what resonated today, what felt good, what did you learn, what's new, all those sorts of things. So feel free to drop those in the chat. Yes, David, we will definitely do a group photo at the very end. So please stick around, folks, if you want to do that. Anything folks want to shout out? Doing it for the kids. Absolutely. There's one takeaway, right? All right. Looking like we learned a lot in 1 hour. Yes, Colleen, you can capture the chat. It's good to hear about the legislative changes coming up. More work to be done. Awesome. And so a lot of folks on our panel have dropped their information in the chat. Feel free to capture that. We'll also send it out as well in our recap email later this week. So don't feel like you have to scramble. But yeah, thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. It's an honor to see so many familiar